I hope you are doing great this afternoon, and thank you for joining us in this Meirc webinar. It's a little bit of an introduction about how can HR professionals use data analysis to leverage their business decisions to increase their position and impact on the organization. Just allow me before I start to make sure that you are all available and you can hear me well. So if you can just type anything in your chat box, let me know if you can hear me well before we start off. Thank you. John's there. Maruf is there. Great. Welcome, Ham. Glad to see you. Hello, John. Welcome to the webinar as well. Thank you very much for joining. Let me just allow 10 seconds and then we start. Okay, that's great. Welcome everyone. Again, that's a very hot topic that we are discussing today. Everyone is talking about data. Data is the new oil, is the resource that everyone is eager to find, to mine, to analyze, and to get the benefit out of. And that's why I said to myself that as an HR professional and as everyone interested in HR from business perspective, it's very important for us to join this wave to increase our competencies and to develop ourselves further in this area, which I believe, and it's not only my belief, it's also a fact that it's becoming crucial for businesses. In fact, just before we move any forward, allow me to introduce our company just for a couple of minutes to let you know about Meirc Training and Consulting, the provider of this free webinar. So Meirc is a company that has been serving the market since 61 years now. We we will wrap up our 62nd year very soon. Started in 1991, serving clients in GCC and the Middle East. Nowadays, we offer more than 200 topics across Middle East, Africa, East Asia, and Europe in so many areas, in so many categories. We offer in-house programs and consulting services. We also have a technical division that offers industry-specific and function-oriented trainings that's called Plus. So that's the company in short. We stand out for 5 values, which are mastery, excellence, innovation, reliability, and client centricity. These are the values that the name Meirc stands for. This is what makes us wake up every morning and go to deliver the latest of knowledge to our partners. In fact, the 5th value, which is about client centricity, is why Meirc offers free webinars every Thursday. And I can see here that some of you are some of our regulars, like Bushra, if I'm not mistaken. She's always there. Latifa as well is not the first time that attends those webinars. So I really want to thank you for being loyal partners to Meirc Training and Consulting. Our company offers training in almost 30 areas that you can see now on your screen: accounting, project management, IT, planning and strategies, pharmaceutical management, project management, HR, training courses, marketing and sale, quality and productivity, communication, customer service, and the list goes on. I don't want to dwell a lot about the company, neither about myself. My name is Rabia. I'm a management consultant with Meirc Training and Consulting. I have a master's degree in education and another one in human resource management and training. It has been a while that I have been in this business. It's almost 20 years now. My specialty in Meirc, the courses I offer are in HR, leadership, interpersonal skills, admin, and communication. A little bit about myself. That's the formal introduction. The informal introduction that I would like to tell you about is that in school I used to struggle with math. So it wasn't an area of celebration for me. It was an area of struggle. And then it turned out that I didn't understand math well. What I needed was context, because what I studied regarding math was a bunch of formulas and numbers that didn't make sense. I couldn't relate this math to anything in my world and everything around me. But then I got to know math up close, and then I discovered that math is all around us. Specifically, I took some courses in statistics, and I was fascinated with the power of the tools that statistics offer. And as we speak right now, you know that these kind of tools in statistics are commonly used in several areas of business. In marketing, they are used to predict what products client would buy, what products would sell more, what ad will get more clicks and more engagement on social media. It's kind of predicting what's going to happen to the future of the organization. In sales, you can forecast numbers, you can set targets, you can know whether someone's going to achieve it or not. In finance, you can really check your assets, decide on the best way of investing company resources, financial assets that they have. So why not HR leverage those methodologies as well to predict people-related matters? So just a while, let me check. I guess someone Tayyib, you're not being able to see the video. You mean you're not able to see the slides? That's what you mean? So my colleague is going to guide you through the chat box as well. So we were saying that HR need to leverage their position using data analysis in order to inform, transform, and really impact organizations. So what about combining HR and data analytics? How this really would happen? So allow me first to define with you the concept of HR analytics. So the competency or the concept of HR analytics is the utilization of data related to people inside the organization in order to inform, transform, and empower business decisions, specifically those decisions related to people's strategies. So, many questions can be asked regarding people. Who's going to resign soon? Who's gonna benefit from a training? By when we can promote this person and make sure that they will perform well? Is online learning going to be beneficial? Do we need diversity? When do we need diversity, and how much diversity we need in our workplace? Lots of questions that every time we sit to plan the future of people in the organization, these questions pop up to our mind right away. And so far, what we have used in terms of tools were not informative enough. A study that has been released recently says that only 20% of HR professionals master the use of data analytics methodologies in order to impact their businesses. And that's why, unfortunately, in so many organizations, HR is somehow left behind when highly important strategic decisions are being taken. So how we can transform this reality? Certainly, this topic is very deep and at the same time requires lots of time. And what we are going to do in this webinar is just to have a taste of how we can use data analytics in our day-to-day HR operation. So let me start right away. What happens when you use HR analytics? First of all, you minimize the cognitive bias that you have currently in your decision-making process. The cognitive bias is when an expert gets a certain hunch and builds a point, and this hunch is not always correct, but then it will direct their decisions and their thoughts in the wrong way. And that's why when you are talking to numbers, you minimize this kind of bias. And notice please that I didn't use the word eliminate, but I purposefully used the word minimize because you can never get rid of bias to 100% degree. It's only a matter of minimizing this kind of cognitive bias. When you use data analytics, you increase your credibility as an HR professional because now you are talking with hard facts that companies believe in. Top management, boards of directors, CEOs, executives, C-suite level believe in numbers. They don't believe in hunches. And that's why when you provide analysis that shows thorough methodologies, comprehensive picture, then you will gain more credibility. The third thing is that you will be able to improve your future practices as an HR professional in order to make them better, more effective, and more beneficial for everyone in the organization. And finally, you will guarantee impact on business performance. You will not be considered anymore as a cost center as an HR professional, but as a revenue generation center, which is the status that we all dream about as HR proponents. So now we know the benefits, and now let's go towards the components of HR data analytics. But before that, I would like to invite you, please, that at any point in time, if you have a question, just please drop it in the chat box. If we can answer it right away, then we will do it. Otherwise, we can postpone it until it is the right time to answer it. So what are the three components of HR data analytics? First of all, the first component is business context. The second one is people data, and the third one are the statistical methods that you can use. So let's go deciphering one by one. What do we mean by each of those three components? The first one, which is the business context, is about making sure that the analysis that we are performing is done taking into consideration the trends of talents in the market that you are operating in. The second one, it needs to take into consideration the best practices in HR. And when we say best practices, it doesn't mean necessarily that what are the multinational companies doing, but what is working for you, what can be customized to work for you, because HR is not a one-size-fits-all area. It's a tailored, customized solution. It means that what happens to what is successful in one organization is not necessarily successful in the other. The third and very important business context element is the organization strategy. What I mean is that every initiative that HR needs to launch in an organization, or every plan, every objective needs to be perfectly aligned with the objective of the organization. Talking about that, let's say you would like to run an engagement survey to identify the level of satisfaction of your employees. You'll spend some money on that. I know that it's nice. It's nice to have an engagement survey. I know what people think about the organization. But it's not always good. Why? Because maybe it's not aligned with the company's strategies, or it might be aligned with the strategy, but not with the priorities. So maybe it's not the right time to do that. Maybe you need to invest in a system where you can manage your learning and development activities, or what is called an LMS. It's very nice. It's technological, it's cutting edge, it's very fancy. Is it now the right time? Is it worth the investment itself? Sometimes an Excel sheet would be more than enough. So your practices need to be aligned with the market, but most importantly with the objectives and the strategies of your organization. That's the first element, business context. The second one is the people data. Now, it's very important to know that when you want to mine or dig to find out data about people, you don't only look into your HR files, because data is not only found in HR files. In order to make sense, you need to seek data from several places. I have here 7 examples only, but you can add as much as you want. Certainly, you get data from administration, from employee files, like as usual biometrics, biography, which university, how long has been in the organization, what are his preferences, CV, degree, etc., signatories. So that's the one thing. But you can also collect data from your performance management system. Surprisingly enough, although people are not working in sales, but you can get some information from the sales department, from the finance, from customer satisfaction department, from competency frameworks, and from the line managers of employees. So when you collect data in order to analyze it, you don't collect it only from HR files, but you collect it from the whole business context that we spoke about, from the strategy documents, from the market trends, from the surveys that has been done in your market, so on and so forth. So there are so many sources, and if you can imagine yourself working in data analytics, then it means that you are networking with people across these many organizations that you can see on the screen, and you will also have to connect with them, gain their trust, explain to them the importance of what you are doing and what is beneficial for them in order for them to give you the right information on time, because the collaboration here is key. You might go to line managers, send them a survey, ask them for a focus group, or sit with them on a one-on-one interview, but they will not give you what you want in terms of information for so many considerations. So your role as a business partner remains key here in terms of implementing data analytics in HR. Are we okay so far, ladies and gentlemen? You're good? Right? Silence means you're good. Or we have just lost you. So just let me know. Okay, great. Our third element is statistical methods. Now here you will start seeing some names that aren't really nice. They aren't the best key attractive words that you usually read in books, because they come from math. And math is dry by nature. So what are the methodologies, what are the tools that HR analytics professionals use? Ahmad, great question. How financial and sales related to people data? That's a great question. Let's say you would like to know how HR practices are impacting your business performance. So your implementation of compensation and benefits or total reward strategies might influence the sales of your organization. Now, these questions that you are asking and how finance is related to people data are the most important questions because they relate us as HR people to what matters most in our organizations, which are finance and sales. So, for example, you would like to implement some reward strategies that would increase people productivity and in the same time are cost effective. So you will need data from the finance department. You need to go and ask what is the impact of salary increase on our P&L or on our bottom line. That's the thing. Maybe how you choose to do your training for marketing department is going to impact how much sales is going to be generated. So it's all an interconnected link in the department, and data is needed from every single place because surprisingly enough, you might find correlations to data that you never thought about. And that's the beauty about merging data analytics into HR. Is it okay, Ahmed? Please let me know, otherwise I can dig more into this area specifically. So what are the statistical methods that you need to get familiar with? One is correlations. Correlations explores relationships between variables, like would the frequency of trainings offered for employees impact their motivation? Sometimes you will find a positive correlation, which means that these two variables move up together. When one increases, the other increases. Or somehow it's a negative correlation, and when one increases, the other decreases. Another tool or method in statistics is regression. Is a tool that's very important to build predictive models to be able to forecast the future. The t-tests are comparative tests that allow us to identify significance and averages between two periods of time or two audiences in order to understand whether the changes make sense or not. Factor analysis is something we use to check in a questionnaire what are the questions that are most impacting the final results. Cranbach alpha is the factor that we calculate to check the internal consistency of questionnaires, and the analysis of variance is another methodology as well to relate significant variables in a significant manners together. So as you can see, these terms are maybe not the best sounding terms, but they are going to turn very beneficial as we see in this seminar. Nowadays, unfortunately, what most HR people use to report their numbers are averages, pie charts, frequency bar, percentages, and some of them have went a little bit complicated to offer pivot tables. In fact, those are good, but unfortunately not good enough, because this is only tell you about the future, and as much as you dig inside the analysis, sometimes averages are misleading, sometimes pie charts are not representative, and sometimes percentages without benchmarks would not really allow you to extract insights from the data itself. So that's a little bit of a theory regarding HR analytics. And if for now, until this moment, it doesn't make perfect sense for you, it's perfectly fine. Why? Because I said it's a little bit of a challenging topic that requires lots of time. But I hope, and I have high hopes, that through the example that I'm going to go through next, we will be able to really realize the importance and the beauty of using data in HR analytics. Now, I'm going to do an exercise that's going to seem a little bit like fortune telling. It's going to seem a little bit like someone is digging into the future, looking into a crystal ball in order to find what's going to happen in the future. I know that might seem a little bit weird for you, but bear with me. So what happens usually? The whole thing starts with a certain intuition or a certain feeling from you as an HR professional that there are some variables that are connected together somehow and they are trying to tell you something. So you start by building what we call a hypothesis. So the example that I'm going to share with you today starts with a hypothesis that is divided into two sub-hypotheses, H1 and H2. What are these hypotheses? The first one says married employees who experience improvement in performance and competencies are more likely to stay in the company. Now, you're going to ask me, how did I come up with this? As I said, it's just an intuition that I yet need to prove whether it is true or not. The second part of the hypothesis is as interesting, and it says salary increase and promotions received have no impact on attrition. Attrition means employee leakage, or simply said, resignations. So that's how things start out. And then the next thing you do is trying to decide what are the variables that you need to measure. So remember, we are measuring employee resignation. In other words, one way to make employee resignation or transform it into a number is to translate it into days of service. So our question is, how many days this employee will spend with us as an organization before he or she resigns? And we need to know this information as fast as possible. So if this employee is a key position, we will be able to replace him or her without impacting the business. Now, from the hypothesis that we have developed, you can identify some independent variables. The independent variables are the ones that when they change, we expect that the days of service, which is our dependent variable, change with accordingly. So what do? Practically, what happens? You need to choose a sample. And in order to choose a valid sample, the best thing in this scenario is to go and dig into all the employees that have submitted their resignation from your organization in the past 5 or 6 years. Now, we will assume that you have been very futuristic and you have been gathering this data since 2014. And you also have the average of these 5 years on how every employee who resigned have experienced changes in performance improvement. This is something that you get from performance management systems. You would also calculate in which rate their competencies improved through these 5 years, and this is something you get from the training and development department, or from the performance management department, or sometimes from line management. You go to finance and you ask them about the salary increase rate that these employees have experienced during the last 5 years. You go to the administration file to check how many dependents, it means wife and kids, these employees had. And finally, you check your employee file to recognize how many promotions this person have received during his service in your organization. So you go and start gathering the data. So you will need like to imagine an Excel sheet with 6 columns. The first column is your days of service. The second one is performance improvement rate, etc., etc. And under each column you have 300, 400, 500 data points or entries for every employee who resigned from your organization. So what do you need to do next? Now you have this Excel file in front of you, and you need to start asking questions for your data. My dear data, what is related to what? Is the number of dependents influencing the days of service? Would someone with more kids stay more or stay less? Is someone with a decrease in performance stay more or stay less? So in this way, you start somehow searching for insights for your data. And then what you do is start running some tests using some of the methodologies that we discussed before. Let me remind you about some of those methodologies: correlation, regressions, factor analysis, ANOVA, etc. So these are our variables, and we decide on our methodology or methods, excuse me, to start first with the correlation, to check whether these variables are related together. So in Excel or in SPSS or in R or in Python, which are some data analysis softwares, you run a correlation test, and the test will tell you that there is no correlation with salary increase rate. It means salary increase rate has nothing to do with the number of days that an employee will serve in your organization. Mr. Khalid, my colleague will just give you some advice regarding your issue if you're not listening to us. So now, as you run the correlation test, you remove one of the 5 variables from your model, and you start looking again towards the other 4 variables that you can see on the slides. So we decided, based on as well experience in data analysis, that our next method to analyze the data is to run a regression. And regression mainly checks how a change in the independent variable will impact the dependent variable. So it says, how will the days of service change when the number of dependents change from one participant to another? And it will tell you, based on some large formulas that, thank God, nowadays you don't have to do with yourself, which variable is significant in terms of impacting the variance in the days of service and which is not. So our regression test that we did tells us that any change in performance improvement will not impact how many days of service this employee will have. And again, this comes from our sample. These are not scientific facts that we are generalizing across the market, but this is what applies to the sample data that we got from our organization. So this mainly now applies in the organization subject of the research itself. So as we remove those two variables, we are left with three independent variables that can predict the days of service. The first one is the competency improvement rate. The second one is the number of dependents. And the third one is the number of promotions received during the service days. And luckily enough as well, our software will provide us with an equation of the future that is called the regression equation. So the regression equation is going to seem like you see right now. It's a linear equation that tells us that the days of service in your organization is equal to 582.79 plus 78.07 times the competency improvement rate plus 66.21 times the number of dependents plus 112 times the number of promotions received. So that's all about the past. That's about the employees that have left the organization. Now the main question is my very important asset to the organization, Sami, when he is going to leave the organization. So as I know from my data that I have right now, and remember Sami is still an employee in the organization, I know that Sami has 3 dependents, not two wives, 1 wife and 2 kids. He has experienced 55% increase in competencies and received 3 promotions during his service in the organization. So our model tells us that Sami would serve 1,227 days in our organization. So let's say these are almost 4 years. If he has been in the company for 3 years, now we can tell that by the end of the next year, Sami is going to resign. That's the future that we are talking about. And then you start asking yourself the right question: what can I do to Sami to stay more in the organization? Now you can customize everything about your HR practices in order to make sure that your employees, your assets are not going to leave. Ahmad, the constants here are generated from the data by the software itself. So the calculation of these constants is very long, but thank God, as we said before, a software like SPSS or Python or R or even Excel, if you give the data, the columns of the data that we spoke about, and you ask them to perform a regression analysis, then it will return this equation right away without any effort from your side. And one thing that I would like to add, if you look into these variables, you can see that the number of promotions received has the highest impact in terms of predictability, which is 42% in this equation, which is quite high. So now you can make sure that you offer the promotions in a way that keep your employees engaged to increase the days of service. Maybe you can also encourage employees to have more kids, because it seems like when they have more kids, they would be staying more in your organization. And then you can see that lots of windows are open for opportunities that maybe you didn't think about, because you were only using averages, percentages, frequencies, and data that is only available in your HR books. And this way we wrap up with the content of this webinar. Just before we leave, I would I would like to give you some time. I know that you have so many questions, so if you have some questions that you would need to ask, I'll allow 5 to 10 minutes for that. So please go ahead. Rabi, yes, sure. You can receive a copy of this presentation. Absolutely. Anyone else, gentlemen, would like to receive a copy of the presentation? So I will be waiting for a few minutes for your questions. Okay, so gentlemen and ladies, I would like also to tell you that if you are interested in really mastering the methodologies of HR analytics, Ham, that's a very important question. Let me come back to this right away. So I was saying that if you would like to really master this area and increase your competencies, we are offering next month, by the end of January 2020, an HR certification endorsed by the Society of Human Resources Management and HRCI as well. It's a certificate called Certified HR Analyst that covers everything about data analytics that would interest HR people to really master this kind of area and join the wave of data analytics. I just sent the link to you on the chat box so if you would like to check it as well, please feel free to do so. Ham, usually keeping a high potential employee, because remember we said that we need Sami in the organization. Keeping Sami is 5 times less expensive than attracting someone else that would join the organization and perform at Sami's level. So usually until this moment, unless your organization has different considerations, retaining employees that have high potential has been always positively impacting performance and bottom line of organizations. Further questions? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much, very much for your attendance. I hope that you enjoyed this this webinar, and I hope that it was up to your expectation. I'm gonna type as well my email for you in case you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask in the future about that, and I'm gonna be sending you using the same email the presentation soon. Please feel free to get in touch with me at any point in time if you need to know more about our services regarding HR courses. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend and best regards.
Meirc.com